sense that there's a correct way of doing it. A lot of young actors, when they start out, even if they're not English, do the Shakespeare accent, where they're like, oh, I come not to praise Caesar, but to bury him. And some people get really angry if Shakespeare isn't done the correct way. There's another theatre critic called Dominic Cavendish who wrote an article just a couple of weeks ago titled, "The Woke Brigade are close to cancelling Shakespeare," in which he says that if you choose to take offence, there's a lot of stuff in Shakespeare that might be triggering. So the woke brigade, whoever they are probably going to cut the whole thing. And all these racially diverse casts and gender bending are threatening England's national poet. Nobody tell Dominic Cavendish that I once played Romeo across a trans woman as Juliet. He'll freak out. Cavendish and others seem to be assuming that there's an authentic version of Shakespeare that audiences are entitled to. But this point can't really be grounded in history because Shakespeare has changed so much. 400 years ago, women weren't allowed on stage at all. People's accents and acting styles have changed. Even the script might not be identical. Shakespeare only gave each actor his part, and it wasn't until after he died that a bunch of his lads got together and decided to compile the plays from old bits of script and whatever they could remember. But a stronger version of this argument might be that it's not about historical accuracy, it's about giving the people what they want. And this is pretty common in the rest of the acting industry. The accents in Downton Abbey aren't historically accurate, but it is what a lot of people expect folks of that era to sound like. This accent, which they teach in British drama schools, is called General American, and it's not accurate. If you're from the United States, you can probably tell, but it is what a British person needs to hear to understand that the character speaking is American. And when it comes to the globe, for better or worse, this is the place to find Shakespeare. If you're in London, famous for having some of the best theatre in the world, and you want to see some of the best writing in the world, for just £5, this is probably where you're going to come. Audiences have expectations, which prompts the question, what should artists do about it? Should they give the people what they want? Or should art try and do something more? What is art actually for? Welcome to the party! Making this show is an interesting challenge. Ostensibly, the point is to teach people philosophy, and yet there is plenty about the channel that isn't strictly educational. A lot of my theatrics are here for entertainment, or because they fulfill some deep creative need in me, but trying to find the balance between the fun, the education, and the personal expression is a tricky thing to make sense of. And what do we do when we can't make sense of things? We lie on the kitchen floor and cry. No, of course not. We read philosophy. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche was a pretty weird guy. He lived in Germany at the end of the 19th century, when a lot of people were going off organized religion. This guy called Charles Darwin had written a book about how everybody is secretly monkeys or something, and nobody was created by God at all. Gutted. And this came as a shock. Some people thought it was a disaster, some people thought it was the best news ever. A lot of folks had to reevaluate their whole lives. What is the point of the universe? What are we even doing here? Why are all the best TikToks filmed in bathrooms? And Nietzsche said it's art that holds the answers. That's what separates us from the animals. Life isn't like a philosophical theory with neat little premises and conclusions, my friend. Life is like art. Meaningless, expensive, and mostly rubbish. Life must be seen as constantly and inevitably wicked, because life is something essentially amoral. Existence and the world appear justified only as an aesthetic phenomenon. Nietzsche sets up a distinction between two opposing forces: the Apollonian, named after Apollo, god of light, logic, and reason, and the Dionysian, named after the god of wine, irrationality, chaos, and actors. He says the history of art and culture can be explained as the struggle between these two forces, and that we've been pretty Apollonian for a while now, so it's time to bring back a little more Dionysus. To give you a peek behind the curtain here, this move by Nietzsche is what philosophers call doing a Jordan Peterson. You invent two categories, seemingly out of nowhere. You don't explain what they mean, but you say, everything in the world is these two things. No! I will not be taking questions at this time! He thought that the ancient Greeks knew how to balance the Apollonian and Dionysian when they were writing their tragedies. At least until philosophers came along and ruined everything. Socrates, such an Apollo. The only art he thought measured up to the ancient Greeks in terms of getting the balance right were the operas of Richard Wagner, who you've definitely heard before, because he did Ride of the Valkyries. And the Bridal March. So Nietzsche thought that art and artists held a really important place in society. Art is the battleground between Apollo and Dionysus that reflects the whole culture. And he also thought it was great news that a genius like Wagner had finally come along to revive the Dionysian spirit. It probably meant great things for German society just around the corner. Right? Right? And Nietzsche may have been madder than a box of frogs, but if you've ever seen literally any art, you can probably understand why he would want artists to try and do something for their audience. This is maybe a controversial opinion, especially on YouTube, where the self-confessional monologue is kind of an established format. But if your art is all about expressing your deeply held emotions, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's good art. How many times have we seen sad movies or plays or songs, or especially slam poems by sad white guys about, oh, I'm very sad and my pain is real and there's a hidden darkness inside and nobody understands it and I'm Joker, but it's like Joker. It's like society is Joker, but what I'm saying is like, I'm like the Joker though.
What is more important to our culture than the Joker?
As one of my old drama school teachers used to say, he's boring. If you're going to do a self-confessional YouTube monologue, at least put some costume changes in it. The ancient Greeks also thought that artists have a higher calling, even though Plato said most of them are rubbish at it. In his book, The Republic, he tries to design the perfect society. And he says, democracy? Sounds good, doesn't work. Terrible idea. Instead, we should be educating our rulers from birth to do the job. He thought that some theatre might be able to educate audiences if it was about very specific things. But he wanted to ban almost all of it, because it's not like artists know anything about teaching people good ideas. Hello! That's what philosophers are for. In another work of Plato's, called Laws, he talks about where a society should get its rules from. And tellingly, he includes a discussion about the rules of theatre. He says that in the old days, there was a strict separation of genres. Everybody knew what they were watching, you sat there in silence and you paid attention. And at the end, educated judges decided which play was best.
The authority, which determined and gave judgment and punished the disobedient, was not expressed in a hiss, nor in the most unmusical of shouts of the multitude, as in our days, nor in applause and clapping of hands. But the directors of public instruction insisted that the spectators should listen in silence till the end, and boys and their tutors and the multitude in general were kept quiet by a hint from a stick.
But then the playwrights tore up the rules and created all kinds of popular nonsense.
Mingling lamentations with hymns and paeans with dithyrambs, imitating the sounds of the flute on the lyre and making one general confusion. Ignorantly affirming that music has no truth, and whether good or bad can only be judged of rightly by the pleasure of the hearer. And by composing such licentious works and adding to them words as licentious, they have inspired the multitude with lawlessness and boldness.
Plato thought that the theatre would cause audiences to feel all kinds of emotions that they shouldn't be feeling. But his student, Aristotle, said no. Better to feel those feelings and purge yourself of them in a controlled environment like the theatre. The Greek word he uses is catharsis. Catharsis isn't just about getting the feelings out, though. If it was, then it would be pretty obvious that Aristotle's theory doesn't work. You can lie on the kitchen floor and listen to as much tragic music as you like. It won't stop you feeling sad. The sadness goes on forever. So another meaning of the Greek word is purification. This is maybe just a personal taste thing, but I find when I'm really down, listening to sad music doesn't really help, even though that is what I want to do. If the music is really beautiful, then maybe I can be like, oh, beauty is still possible, even in ugly times. But what really helps me feel purified is a good tragedy. I've seen the musical Hadestown twice.